Accept your death.
So as a Canadian and American talking, it was actually really funny to me. We're talking about Celsius versus Fahrenheit, and it reminds me of like every time that I've ever been when I'm traveling to events or whatever, and I get to the hotel rooms, and I'm looking at the AC or the heater or whatever, and it's always in Fahrenheit, and I always just guess what it's supposed to be, like, because I don't really know the conversion. I could have Googled it, but I'm like, I know what I'm doing here. Like 58, that's probably fine, like that's a comfortable room temperature, opposite end, 81, yeah, that's probably comfortable, It's just like, I'm in there for a while. I'm like, it is really hot in here. Or then likewise, like it is really cold in here. And I don't know why, for like whatever reason, I could just never just Google it beforehand and be like, what's a comfortable room temperature in Fahrenheit? Like I know in Celsius, it's, usually between 20 and 25 degrees, but I never like actually have the wherewithal to look into it on the day that I arrive in my hotel room. I'm usually quite uncomfortable for at least a few minutes while I try and figure out what exactly these kind of equations look out to. It's one of the least things I look forward to traveling these days anyways. I don't know if that's relatable to you at all, Hater, but some
I've been in situations where I've been really confused about things. Like when I went to Europe, and like this is like in 2002, and it was us, a big group of people. It was for a music festival, and so we kept meeting up with other people. Like this is back in like, if anyone out there that remembers like the live journal days, so meeting up with like online friends and stuff like that. And there was this woman with us from Toronto, and she was talking about the weather and how hot it's been and stuff like that. And they've been saying they even insist it's supposed to be cooling down, it's supposed to be cooling down. And when she woke up this morning, like before a flight or whatever, it was 32 fucking degrees. And I was like, dude, that's like the point of freezing. What are you talking about? Like, is she being ironic? Like, it took me a minute because I'm in a pretty landlocked part of America. I'm not like if I lived in New York or Seattle or something like that, and you have a lot more exposure to those sorts of things, right? Being so close to the border and maybe a little bit diverse of a population, but I was pretty sheltered. And I was really confused for a minute before I started to put that together. It felt really dumb.
Those are the things that I think that it would make like a trip to Europe like a little bit easier for me. That's at least one thing that I wouldn't have to worry about. I haven't ever made the jump across the pond there. I do have intent to do it at least one time, kind of a bucket list kind of idea. But as of right now, I haven't. I know there's lots to see, but I'm kind of like one of those people that like, I just, for whatever reason, if I'm super into something, I'll really appreciate it more than like just seeing something for like the sake of seeing something. Like when I went to New York last year and I flew over like what's that big statue again? I'm going to get blown up for this one. Statue of Liberty. Statue of Liberty. See, that's how much I don't care about those types of things. And like even everybody here when I got back, oh, did you see the Statue of Liberty? I'm like, well, I saw it from the plane. Like, is there more to see? Like, and it's just like those types of things are lost on me, But there could be things that I'm like super duper interested in that I would like to see that might be more obscure that more people wouldn't appreciate. So it's just like those travel type of things.
That's what makes people individuals, right? Different flavors. It's like, the kind of music you like or the kind of food you like. We talk about stuff like that a lot. You can't help the way you're wired, and there's no need to be like sorry for it unless, it's self-serving and at somebody else's expense. If that's a personality trait, I think that's a red flag. But yeah, otherwise you're just a human, and it's part of the experience.
It's
keeps everyone else in check, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's you like what you like. At the end of the day, if it ain't hurting anybody, then then by all means you do just that. And let me tell you what I like a lot in this world is the comments. So
I was gonna say comments. That was gonna be my first guess.
I get so predictable in my old age here. So let's get to it here. AZE plays. Now that MK1 is pretty much done, I'm wondering what will become of the podcast. I assume it will still be around. I'm looking forward to episodes in the future after NRS's next project is announced. But in the meantime, do you guys have any plans of what you'll discuss? Still interested in MK1, but with no more future content, I imagine it'll be harder to come up with topics. Are there plans to deviate to conversation about other things, or perhaps revisiting old NRS games on a bi-weekly basis, leading up to the Game Awards, which will hopefully have the next title? So, that bit of a bombshell there. If you didn't hear, it is announced officially that Mortal Kombat 1 will receive no further content, which was pretty much anticipated by everybody as soon as they dropped the definitive edition. One interesting thing, though, is that they did mention there will still be balance changes. So we have not received our last balance patch.
That's what I was saying last week. And then the more we talked about it, I talked myself out of that, right? And went and fact checked myself and stuff. But man, I knew it. I could feel it in my bones. Okay, so
you called that one. You definitely called it. And you know, that was, like I was saying last week, that was a weird like switch of roles where I was a little bit more pessimistic one and you were more optimistic. And look at that, a little optimism paid off. We got more balance patches coming.
Well, don't get carried away here. You can't be saying stuff like that about me. I wouldn't call it optimistic. I mean, I was like literally just trying to get like the kind of vibes that it gives off. And now that we have a little bit more context with like leaks and stuff like that, maybe, and I think people there was the people that were blaming everything on WB. Then there was the people who was like, okay, well, NRS is in bed with WB, right? Even if they made a bad deal or something, or things have changed, that's like the nature of business and stuff. And still like what they're doing or the situation they got themselves in. But like after, the cancellation, the leaks about Chaos Reigns like not doing well, it's probably because it was like overpriced, right? That was a big talking point. It was like $50 instead of 30 or 40 like DLC like usually is. And those leaks saying that they were just done, they were done with it. And now look at, here we are. So I think people are definitely more in like, okay, we're seeing people are understanding more the power and the decisions made by the publisher that isn't really up to NRS, and they're kind of like at their mercy. But they said something about it. Finally, they said it on x.com.
Yeah, and like pretty quickly after what we all thought was the last balance patch too, which in MK11 they waited quite a long time after that last patch, which wasn't even really that crazy of a patch, to be like, okay, we're moving on to other things. And like in their initial tweet there, they said they were talking about that, and then they made a reply tweet to that saying that they'd want to focus their stuff on their next project, which is kind of saying, while we're moving our resources on to the next project.
Right.
So kind of ending the Mortal Kombat 1 life cycle with a couple things left to add.
But they were talking about balance updates, right? They use plural. So I don't think it's just going to be like, okay, we nerf this really annoying thing like Shiva Stomp or something, peace. I think it'll be maybe not substantial like buffs, but I bet there'll be like little tweaks right there still. I mean, we still have a lot of competitive play. It's Combo Breaker weekend and all of that. And I think they're paying attention to how people are playing the game and thinking to themselves what they think is too strong and what needs to be buffed or whatever. And I think they'll tweak accordingly. Maybe nothing major, but.
Yeah, I mean, when you see those numbers on like how many like times a cameo appeared on stream or a character appeared on stream, it's pretty jarring from the group of, like Tremors and that kind of a thing, T1000, as opposed to like Quan and Frost and that kind of thing, who weren't seen on stream at all. So, I mean,
it's the same story we've seen a million times. It's not as egregious as the Chameleon era. That's what Tremors become now. But I think there's always going to, and if it wasn't Tremor, it would be somebody else. I think that number, the 40 whatever Tremors or whatever the image says, if that wasn't Tremor's face there, it'd be somebody else's face there. The numbers are pretty static. I feel like that's kind of a reflection of the state of the game. I mean, it could be way worse.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about all the things that we've had from like the initial Homelander Farah stuff to the Peacemaker Chameleon stuff, like it could have been, it's been worse before. So I actually think we're pretty lucky to have it where we, and if this, for whatever, like, we know this isn't the case, but for whatever reason, if it ended up being that this was the last iteration of the game, I would be totally happy with that. There's a couple annoying things, like the T1000's mix is kind of annoying, but all in all, I'm happy.
I am not even mad about the Tremor thing because of the mind game of just pulling out the raw ambush. So people doing like negative stuff and pulling out the ambush, but not doing the up punch to keep it safe and then launch them. We've seen that a lot this weekend for Combo Breaker. We'll talk more about that later. But saw a few times it was like Faisal, I think, that would just bring it out raw, and then you just got those phantom frames, right? Like while they're over respecting the ambush follow up, so people getting away with some way other stuff. I think that extra little layer somehow makes it less obnoxious to me.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I've played against a lot of Tremors in Combat League, and they're not pulling off a lot of the mind games that I've seen in the high level play in tournaments, and it's still fairly annoying. But I mean, definitely manageable compared to other things that we've seen. So I'm curious to see what balance changes they're going to make. If they're going to, I would hope that they would kind of bring up the bottom, because even though the top tier is pretty oppressive, like, or like, I shouldn't say oppressive, but like, it's a very clear line of who's in the top tier. They don't feel like top tiers in previous NRS games where they're just kind of like, if you don't pick this one character, then you just have no hope kind of idea, So it feels like if they were to bring up the bottom tier characters, then I think we would be in a pretty good place. How they would do that, I have no idea. And who they consider the bottom tier, I have no idea. But I bet that image of all those characters that you saw on stream probably says something to them, unless they have some sort of a streamlined idea in mind already. But I don't know how far they think ahead.
If your cameo is not doing something, if you are a cameo and you're not doing something specific to make a team synergistic in a really specific way that makes you worth picking over literally everybody else, even if that's only with one character. So say like after the Pharah nerfs, right? You see her, I'm going to say Homelander Pharah, even though there's Scorpion Pharah and stuff, right? Just off the top of my head, I can't think of another. Oh, like when everyone moved on from Scorpion, right? Well, after Movado came out and things like that, still Lee May Scorpion was like the big thing. The fire breath off of her 7-frame reversal, the old classic. So that kept Scorpion from becoming irrelevant. Was those few like scattered teams. I don't think cameos or like even Tremor, even with like the bad cooldowns and stuff, you still saw him with at least Reiko for the command grab combos before he could start getting them from other cameos. And then, that's forced Tremor to be relevant in other ways. And so they buffed him, that sort of thing. But I don't think that Frost is giving everybody, if you like that flavor, if you want to play like, setups and things like that, and you have things that you can do with the extra hit advantage after a freeze, if that's what floats your boat, but it's still probably on paper not the quote unquote best. That's why you never really ever see it.
Yeah, I played a Lee May Frost in Combat League yesterday, and they were trying to do the mix off of her forward 4, and it was just such an easy fuzzy. Like it wasn't scary at all. You could react to Frost coming out quite easily. So I would be surprised if we didn't see some sort of a change to Frost, whether it's either speeding up that low or, God forbid, making that no ball thing an ambush. Thought of that.
No. Oh my
You'd see her everywhere. He'd see her everywhere, but I guess that'd be better than seeing her nowhere, I guess. I don't know. So as far as like the future of the podcast goes and that kind of a thing, I feel like we're going to keep it pretty consistent until like the support kind of dies for Mortal Kombat 1. This is something that I look forward to every week, sitting down and chatting with my good buddy Hater here. It is kind of like, I think we do deserve a bit of a break in the next little while, just to kind of cool off. And when there's no news happening anyways, but what that kind of looks like, I'm not really sure we've had a clear path as of right now. We still have some stuff to go over, and there's still pro competition stuff happening. And then after all that is kind of cut and dry and done, then, maybe there's a little break in the work, or maybe we have, we start a cooking show instead, I don't know.
I feel like there's always something to talk. Like we just spent 10 minutes talking about cameos.
Yeah.
Off the back of that tweet about Mortal Kombat being canceled. Off the back of, yeah.
If there's anyone that can fill time, it's definitely us. So as long as things are happening, you could ask us a question about our favorite brand of socks, and I would go off about how I would never buy this brand or something like that. I'm sure we could find something to go off of. Maybe not socks, but so
yeah, that doesn't sound very exciting.
I mean, and when you compare
Injustice or like whatever, if we start being like trickled, who knows when the next game will come out? Like how this whole MK1 thing is turned their schedule. I don't think we can rely on the quarter 1 or beginning of quarter 2, whatever it was. April, May is usually like when the games would come out until MK1, which came out in fall, but because it was probably planned for the April or May, but came out early to be released in the year before.
Yeah, and
for the books.
can only hope that they learn their lesson from that one for the next one, that they give it enough time.
I'm sure they did not. I'm
sure they did not. But either way, when things are happening, Hater and I will be here to talk about it. You can rest assured on that one. But I would like a little bit of a break before we get into the next game, whatever that is, but that probably won't be for some time now. So you're stuck with us for a while. Sorry, folks. But yeah, sorry, we got on a bit of a tangent there and then almost completely forgot to talk about that very important topic. So thank you for the question, and appreciate you concerned about your weekly dose of Hater and I. So with that being said, moving on here, Red Jun. I don't write big, long comments like this, but here we go. I have loved this game since day one. The excitement I felt for the cameos and the gameplay is something you don't normally get as an adult, but I was counting down the days to play this game. To start with a selection of characters teams is legendary. I love that you can play Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Shao Goro, Johnny Sonya. I love how they removed Jax and Kano so that freed up space for more interesting characters like Havoc and Natara. I love finding holes in my characters and trying out cameos to fix those holes. Natara Tremor comes to mind. I love playing Combat League and getting to see such expression and character identity. I saw Sub Janet do 60% combo, and when I complimented him, we played 10 private matches afterwards. Love the animations, feel weighty. Sindel's 4-3 comes to mind in other games. So, long comment. That sucks because the game's over. But hopefully,
yeah,
I definitely agree. Like, I was gameplay wise, outside of my balancing issues, I found this game really, really fun from the get go. There was always stuff to lab, and when you got tired of it, just throw a new cameo in there. I also kind of really agree with the comment of leaving kind of Jax and Kano as cameos to focus on more interesting characters.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's something I definitely picked out of this one. No hate to Jax or Kano. There's just, when you have so many characters in the Mortal Kombat universe that could come back, you know, they're just a little bland on that front for me anyways.
Sonya is almost in every game, right? So she was another kind of like not making the main roster is kind of like, you know, Kano's been left out before. I guess that was pretty early.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it was it?
I guess Sonya has two.
Deception. Yeah, Deception, they left him out and they had Kira instead. Kira and Cobra instead, which I don't think was a very popular decision either, but either way, all three of them came back. Mind you, two of them as a guest character, kind of, in a way, heavily hinted at by NRS, which is actually kind of a neat way to include them somehow in the story. So, you know, even if they are a bit of a gimmick, but it is what it is. So overall, I agree with you. I really find the gameplay of this game, just everything else surrounding it, was a huge disappointment in my eyes. I'm glad the gameplay was as strong as it was because it really carried the game to the end where we are now.
I feel like as soon as they got some breathing room, we saw huge improvements. It just took so much time for them to catch up. But once they got there, you could see it was like really noticeable where, you know, everyone was calling the game ass, and then people started defending it, and people came, you know, returned to it. You know, people like me that quit around probably about the time that Tremor came out, and that was my first big break from the game. The game was, you know, like what it was, and, you know, online practice mode and no rooms and yada. We don't need to go through all that stuff again. But like when I came back around the time that Quan Chi came out, I could tell that there was like a noticeable improvement, and other people that I've given that feedback to have also returned to the game and been like, yeah, this shit's fun. And, you know, it's nothing I take super serious, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's a fun game. Fun to mash around and fun to... I'm still like on the fence of whether I'm going to dig back into Shang Shujinko or continue on with Conan Shujinko, because both those pairings for me are a lot of fun right now. I did not expect to play Conan. He was the last character I thought I would ever play, but the way that he works with Shujinko's, yeah, and you just find out and you're just like, actually, this character is super cool. You know, like, even though I'm not a huge fan of the Conan character, I'm finding him pretty coal.
Yeah, that's how I started playing Sunglad Kotal Khan. Just trying to pick something that I normally wouldn't, right? Like even aesthetically, big muscly man. And I was like, but he's got a cool command grab, but it's not one of those annoying inputs either. It's just the quarter circle, and it charges up. We saw that also at Combo Breaker this weekend when Rewind we played some Sun God. But yeah, I had a similar experience with my boy Kotal Khan.
Yeah, sometimes you just find find the one that you didn't expect. You know, same in MK11. I didn't expect to be playing Spawn, but I had a hell of a time playing Spawn. He was super fun and looked super cool too.
Why is it always the big boys dink?
I don't know. Maybe I have a type I didn't know about. Maybe I'm slowly transitioning from a zoner to a grappler. Oh, yeah. Wouldn't that be a thing? Man, that would be an arc, wouldn't it? Heel turn for me. Or maybe the opposite, because people tend to dislike zoners more, but I don't know. Well, I don't
know. I think people hate zoners more than grapplers. Just until they face the wrong grappler, then they hate grapplers more than zoners until they face the wrong zoner, and then that just cycle repeat. I feel like it's completely interchangeable. Like, what are you mad about getting, chipped and random hit to death, or just grabbed to death and shimmied and meatied and all that sort of stuff, trying to avoid grabs. I feel definitely the top two most hated archetypes.
Yeah, like I remember getting some rage quits in MK11 because it was going like when I was playing Baraka, like between like the leg kebab and then the command grab and then the regular throw, and it's just looping the three of them, and it's like, when do I ever get to play? Like, so I can definitely see the hate for both sides, but at the end of the game, it's just fighting games, It's just what we do, how we play it. So,
all right.
Last comment here. WV Midnight says a proper MK versus DC game would be a great way to promote both franchises if WB wants to focus on both. Which this is a really interesting topic, and I think that we've kind of discussed it a little bit before about how like that roster would work. But let's say that if Hater, like you and I kind of got to build the roster for MK versus DC, like how would we do it? What would make it interesting, but without leaving out, like the main, the characters, like for example, like the Justice League or, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, that kind of a thing. Or would it be interesting if you did leave them out? I have no idea.
I don't think they could get away with it. I bet you it's a contract. If they're using an IP like that, like Injustice 2, I'm sure parts of that roster may have been decided for them or heavily insisted on or something. Who knows? I feel like we saw it with like Marvel versus Capcom Infinite, like all the X-Men were missing, and it was all the MCU characters because Marvel's trying to promote all their movies and stuff like that. And whether people like the roster or not, I hear people kind of like came around on it and stuff, but that was like shock, no X-Men. But so I don't know what it'd look like. I think the roster would be pretty watered down because there are characters that you just have to be in there, and they should be in there, right? Like Batman should be in a DC fighting game for sure, right?
100%.
It's just like such an obvious pick.
Yeah.
And you would think, say like the roster is 22 or 24 at launch is like typical NRS or something, right? Like 20 something.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I feel like they're always in the 30s or encroaching on 30 after DLC. So if you divide that in half and just give, say, half of it's MK and half of it's DC, that's 11 slots for each side, 11 or 12 slots for each side. And then you can think of like 5 or 6 staple characters that absolutely have to be in: Flash and Superman and Supergirl, Wonder Woman, Batman, Green Lantern, the core Justice League characters and stuff. Like, who knows? That doesn't leave very many slots left for like deep cuts because, I think there's a tier underneath that, like where, it may not be in popular media, but it's like, it's cool from the comic. Everyone wants like Constantine, and things like that. People want Constantine. People want Beast Boy. People want Static Shock.
Raven, I've seen a lot. People want. I mean,
yeah, Raven to come back and Raven and Killer Frost, like for sure. There's all sorts of care. The DC has so many, say what you will about DC versus Marvel or whatever. I think DC has so many cool characters that could fit into a game like Injustice. Like the rosters on both Injustice games are pretty banger. There's lots of cool characters, and there's good mainstream and there's good deep cuts. And
yeah, I think the main thing that would kind of disappoint me about that is like no new Mortal Kombat characters. I can't imagine that when you have a limited roster that you would put in a brand new character for something like that. You would have to pick from kind of something that's existing. It would be
right.
Because if you use a roster spot for a new character and it's a total flop, like, well, there's a wasted spot, right?
I mean, it depends what they're going for, but our perception of that would definitely seem that way. But think about like just MK1's roster. How many characters do we have? Like 28 or something?
Base, yeah, that sounds about right.
Think about how many characters, MK characters, could still be in this game. That's why it's such a bummer that there's no more combat packs. Like, who's still missing that could exist on this roster, and it feels bad that they're not in the roster, whether a cameo or a main roster character. And then cut that in half. Like, how are you supposed to make that decision after like the obvious Scorpion and Sub-Zero and Liu Kang and Raiden and whoever else? There's not much room left over for the Ashras and the Nataras and Reptiles and Reikos and things like that.
Yeah, I feel like you would basically have like an MK2 roster. Like that would be kind of the safe bet to go with. Like your Shaolin monks and. Maybe. And then a side note to that is, who is your big bad going to be in the storyline? Because, like, are you going to do a Dark Khan kind of a thing? Because I thought that was super lame before, honestly. But I mean, maybe they could do it better somehow. Or I have no idea.
Maybe that's what the James Gunn discussion was about.
Yeah, that's right. Because I met with him. So maybe he was trying to come up with a big bad character for them. How would they do that strategically?
Right, or maybe a conversation like this is kind of tone that we want. I hope the conversation said, "Don't do that evil Superman shit again." I mean, it was cool, but yeah. let's try to figure out a way to get things back on track and meet like the wider consumer base's expectation. Because people like the original Superman, like the energy of that character.
Yeah, and especially with a movie on the forefront, so they kind of would, I'm sure they would tie into that somehow. They do that with all their other games, so I can't imagine it would be much different with an MK versus DC kind of a thing. So somehow maybe have like, maybe Lex Luthor is back in the roster or something like that, a little bit.
Or maybe they did it just to F with us, And Boone's like, "Hey, James Gunn, you want to come meet me for lunch while you're here? I mean, we'll just make it like dark and mysterious, whatever. Wouldn't that be like really funny? And we just don't say shit to anybody.
That would
and
be
just watch him go crazy.
That would be such an Ed Boon thing to do too. Like he's just such a troll that way. Just like, hey, out at lunch with James Gunn, a little selfie on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to add anything like that into his life. I think he's done messing around with stuff like that. And too many people just waiting to be angry about anything.
Yeah, I think he'll probably wait until there's something a little bit more substantial to announce or something to start kind of trolling again. But that's what he likes to do. He likes to make you think, make you anticipate stuff. It'd be interesting I really would like to sit down and talk to him and like find out what stuff that we're missing from previous games that we still haven't discovered yet. Because the dev team has said there's things out there that we haven't discovered in previous NRS titles. Hell, in MK9, we didn't even discover the toasty boost till the end of the game's life, and that's such a huge part of the game. So, I would just be curious. Maybe one day he'll release all that stuff when he retires or whatever. Be like, here's what you missed, and blah blah blah. And we'll be like, go back and everyone will do it, and it'll be like a big community event.
He's like a magician. He wants to be buried with his secrets, from his cold, dead hands. Like, you find it or you don't. I'm still not helping you.
You guys had a chance to figure it out and you didn't. So too bad. And then, 20 years down the road, some retro gamer will be like, this is what I found for MKX. And everyone who would have appreciated that will be long gone. Like, okay, sorry.
Ketchup and Mustard are in a retirement home. They're like, they're both all cataracts. And they're like 98 years old and liver spotted and stuff. Like, holy shit, Ryan, they found it. And that's the moment they both pass.
We could finally rest in peace.
Oh, I wasn't meant to be so dark, but that's a funny thought.
That is a funny thought. Or they decide to restart their YouTube career, and who knows what that looks like at that point in time.
Oh, I was so happy. Like, can we talk about MKX a combo breaker? Because listening to Mustard commentate that top 8 was like listening to a kid in a candy store sort of thing. I love the way he commentates MKX. Like he and like Mr. Aquaman, where their words just kind of start turning into grunts and growls, like as the combo just keeps going, and the setup was like so sick and stuff like that. MKX is not a very fun game for everybody to play, but I appreciate the people that put in the work, because it is by far and away, this is my maybe lukewarm take, best MK visually, like the mood, the attitude, the time that it came out, regardless of like what the gameplay is, it's still an awesome spectator sport. Crowd's always like super hype about it. Like when I talk to people that don't really play the game, you know, like people at work, but they know it from like popular culture and stuff.
Right.
So we're talking about like MK, like on a basic level. That's usually the game that I'm thinking about, like the default, you know. It's got the pit, it's got a sick roster, and people are just that generation of fighting game. The one after MK9, the PlayStation 4 game.
Yeah, if you say what you will about the gameplay or whatever, but I mean, everything else about that game, and we've gushed about it before on here as well, is that's just, it was kind of its own thing. You know, when you look at the rest of the NRS games, you know, it was a step up in far as like graphics and all sorts of things from MK9, and gameplay was way more balanced, and the roster was sick. The guest characters were sick. The guest characters in itself, like the way that you can have these battles between Jason and Leatherface, you know?
Right. Yeah, we talk a lot about them scraping the bottom of the barrel. This is before they got down that deep. This is the top of the barrel, right?
Yeah.
This is when things were getting good. And dude, the brutalities don't give you the dark screen. It just kind of happens. It makes it way more brutal, in my opinion. I don't know why they started doing the dark thing. Maybe stage contrast with new lighting and stuff they were using. But it looks way better when they don't darken it like a fatality, like the way it is in MKX is one thing that I was reminded of this weekend.
Yeah, and that was like the game that they introduced those into, and it was like a super cool way of like kind of introducing these more simpler, shorter, maybe bringing back some old classic fatalities as brutalities in MKX, and just added way more ways to finish. So that was a super welcome addition, in my opinion.
Yep.
And it stuck around too. In every iteration of game, I would be surprised if we ever saw another Mortal Kombat game without brutalities. Except for maybe an MK versus DC with those. Remember those heroic brutalities? Those were awful.
Yeah, I wonder what they would do, because I always felt like in Injustice they could do like a finishing move sort of thing that would be like more along the lines of like what their super is. It doesn't need to be like super brutal, and it doesn't even need to be some like a violent encounter, right? Let, you know, somebody just take somebody away in handcuffs and be lame. I don't know.
I'm not sure that would be super hype, but I mean, I get what you're saying, you know, like
it's like choosing your outro, like sort of thing, you know, custom outro.
Lex Luthor just like kicks your ass into a vault or something and then closes it or something like that, you know.
You know,
like
it doesn't need to be like graphic, right? But he could just incinerate you. All right, you're just dust.
Yeah,
the death is implied.
Like a less violent version of Sector's fatality in MK1, something like that. The incinerator, that would be cool.
Sectors in MK1.
Yeah, her second fatality. Like her first one, she brings you through.
Sorry, I was thinking about the cameo. I was like, what? But yeah, that's a really good one. That's maybe a little bit too graphic for Injustice, maybe.
That's what I would,
what they're going for.
Tone it down, like same idea, but you know, like instead of having the gory parts, maybe it's just a flash on screen, then you're just dust or something like that, you know.
I mean, Sub-Zero ripped off the cameraman's head. You know, he did his fatality on the cameraman in Injustice 2. That was his outro.
You know, he was out for like a few months before I actually understood that that's what was going on there. I thought he was just picking up the camera, and then someone mentioned it to me, and I was like, "Oh, that's so obvious. How did I not figure that out?"
The view's better from up here, you know.
I legit thought he was like just trying to take a selfie or something. I was like, what is that? Like it just winds and like Sub-Zero's like taking a selfie. Like what the hell? And then like, no, like listen, you can hear it. And I was like, listen to the sound effects. I was like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. Rip. You can hear the spine rip on there. So they just obviously couldn't show it for whatever. Poor cameraman. He's just trying to show people the game, you know. And Sub-Zero just walks over. You know, from a lore perspective, it makes zero sense. Here's this guy who's just holding this camera. Sub-Zero's beating up this other dude. He just walks over and rips his head off. Like, that poor guy, out of context, you know, he's just doing his job, holding the camera, you know.
Maybe it was just a robot.
I mean, maybe. That's a little less hype, but you're not wrong. So, anyways, I didn't get to watch much of MKX at Combo Breaker. I saw that Rewind got second. I think he was using Sun God and maybe Ermac.
He used a bunch of characters. No, he used Displacer. So we saw Rewind versus Desda. So that was Bone Shaper versus Displacer. For most of it, I think Desda switched to Mimic. What's the one?
Imposter, yeah.
Imposter, Mimic, what the hell? Too much Elden Ring or something. Yeah, and he played like a little bit of Imposter, but Rewind played like Reptile and he played Bo Raicho. Holy shit. That was super hype.
Bo Raicho.
Yeah. It was cool how relaxed the vibe was there. Like all the teabagging and stuff like that. It did have some kind of like borderline kind of like cringy moments like for me, but whatever. Like I have a new appreciation for Hat Trick Lao coming away from that too. I've been not acknowledging how swaggy it is for all these years, but looks super sick.
Yeah, the combos that character can do. I remember it being I can't remember who it was at the end of MKX's life, but somebody was championing that variation and like, yeah, just like throwing out the hat mid combo and calling it back to keep the juggle going. And like, yeah, there's some super fun things that variation can do.
How do we go from MKX Kung Lao and MKX Scorpion to MK1 Kung Lao and MK1 Scorpion?
I downgrade big time, you know, for a lot of characters in my opinion, but Kung Lao is definitely one of them. He was super duper swag in MKX and in MK9 too, you know, as limited as that game was, he did some cool things. And then, yeah, I just feel like he's so underwhelming in MK1. Like, yeah, he's effective in what he does, but he's just not flashy or cool or any of that, you know?
Right.
Scorpion kind of similar, but I don't know. Scorpion doesn't surprise me as much because he's always kind of been a little bit of a, I shouldn't say bland, but not quite as flashy character, I suppose. MKX did him really well, especially with those Hellfire cancels. Oh boy, some of those were super duper oppressive. But yeah,
MK9 and Justice 1, MKX, and then I don't think he recovered very well from MK11 into his MK1. I mean, he's a really, really strong character.
Yeah.
Right now, if not a little dry, but still very strong.
Yeah, and effective at what he does. So, I mean, you know, I can't really screw him, but not exactly flashy. You know, he's not calling demons from the nether realm to grab his opponent's feet and hold him there for a moment, you know, or calling a demon from behind him.
Why would it make sense for Sub-Zero's brother to do that? It wouldn't make sense. It's like, yeah, so why are you're trading one kick-ass thing for one kind of dumb thing? What's going on here? I don't think this is I don't like the weighted values of this equation.
And those are things that like the Scorpion cameo could have done too, because the Scorpion cameo is like the true like Hellfire Scorpion, right? So he could have been doing stuff like calling demons out to help you and all that cool stuff that MKX Scorpion did. But I mean, he still does some cool stuff, but I mean, I think they could have been a little bit more creative with that particular cameo. All being said and done. And MKX aside, I don't know if you got a chance to watch the MK1 finals at Combo Breaker, but we were hanging out in the Discord watching those.
I saw a bunch.
Yeah,
I saw a bunch, but not all of it.
I was pleasantly surprised at the character variety, even though it was what I expected, like Homelander, Farah, Cyrax, Madame Bo, you know, Havoc, Movado. The matches were all still like super duper good, super duper close, and super duper fun. You know, even though it were characters I knew would be there, I still was, you know, we were getting hype in the chat. You know, after almost every match, there was a few game 5s there, and like, I don't know, it was super duper entertaining to watch, and it was cool to see. You like to see that kind of character variety.
Some really, really high level play, and it did make it so like even the thing is like characters like T1000 aren't necessarily boring, but it's like a song that you used to like until you heard it every hour on the radio, like sort of thing, an oversaturation. But it was still like interesting. Even the mirror matches and stuff, like the mirror matches that were like T1000 Tremor versus T1000 Movado, and you know what they get differently from those cameos, risk reward. all that sort of stuff. It was cool to see that play out.
Yeah, it would, and when I hear of like characters like T1000, when I see them online and I see them in streams, and then I actually see them at top level, and I see people like using the proper counterplay to play around this character and punishing things I didn't know were punishable, and like, you know, guessing correctly on mix and stuff like that. It just makes it more hype, because like it's showing that these characters that seem on the surface to be like so unbeatable, they have weaknesses, and when you see them at that level, you really see how you're supposed to fight against them, and the visions of what NRS kind of had on what makes them so strong and what makes them, you know, where you're supposed to actually fight them and counter them and that kind of a thing. So that was, it's always cool to watch that top level play. I miss being one of those players at one point in time back in the day. But I digress. It was a crazy run. Sonic Fox went to losers in the first match of top 8 against Video Games Yo. That was super duper hype.
That was a very, very good match. The look on VGY's face after, like, when he won, the second that match was over or whatever, the look of relief that washed over him, that was iconic.
Yeah, what a moment for him. That was absolutely amazing. That was just played out of his mind the whole event. And, you know, say what you will about Homelander Farah, but I mean, all the reads,
he made it look cool. His mind games, the way he fucks with people, I admire him so much. He's got that mind game, that timing mind game, right? Like, I don't know. He's very, very good. I'm surprised he hasn't won more, more grand finals, more first places. His gameplay is.
What stuck out to me was the way that he used the entire Farah cameo. Like, the most Homelander Farahs that I'll see are, you know, the kind of, you know, just do the mix, the low, the overhead. And he was using those, but he was also using the Farah grab, and forcing kind of Sonic to eventually try and guess and duck that grab. And
do it empty, just have her get on the back, and he's waiting to get like blocked Fuzzy the mix or make his guess or whatever, and he does nothing at all. That happened once or twice.
And then, like, there was an epic moment where it was kind of back and forth, and then Sonic jumped and then used the Farah swat to like just swat Sonic right out of the air, and like full combo took the round. That I lost my shit when I saw that. And then just the whole use of that cameo. And then, like, when you think about it, they're pretty sure that little Farah swipe is safe on block too. So there's not really much risk to doing it, especially at that range. But it was that in particular was quite reactable. So it was cool to see, you know, again, a cameo that on the surface seems a little cut and dry, kind of boring, to kind of see them use in a way that you don't usually see them. That was quite refreshing to me.
It's one of the best teams in the game, so it's played a lot, and I think it takes a lot of gameplay and a lot of open-minded thinking to start doing stuff like that. Because once a meta gets set, I feel like people just kind of like follow that. There's not many outside the box thinkers. That's not meant to be like derogatory, right? Like, what works, and they spend their time grinding that sort of stuff. But yeah, I like that approach, and you know, we've talked about that before. You use the whole arsenal of cameo. That's what makes the cameo a fun part of the team, is that you get to use everything. Everything works well with your character.
Yep, precisely. And like, hopefully, like after this, we start to see a little bit more, because people tend to watch the tournaments, they just play top tier. Like, I see that a lot in, you know, we'll see like Cyrax, Serena juniors that are just doing kind of basic setups and stuff, just because they've seen it in the tournaments and they know it works, so they're trying to replicate it or whatever. So when you see them really using things completely as a whole, I'm kind of hope that we see a player base that starts to kind of adapt that more, rather than, you know, just using the cookie cutter stuff that's just 1-2 guess again, you know.
Yeah, and there's a few moments where the commentators were like, I didn't even know that was a thing in this game. Like, I literally just saw that for the first time.
Yeah. Even when the commentators are stunned, that's how you know that, you know, that's the tech. That's the tech right there. I will say though, like, I still, as someone who's, I would say probably more on the casual side of things, I still find Cyrax Serena just not fun to fight against at all. I just, you know, I realize there's counterplay, but, you know, it's just, it's just not fun. And we've talked about that before. When you just don't get a chance to play the game, it's just not fun. So we'll see if anything happens.
It takes away player agency. Is the kind of common thing, and she's not the only one that does that, right? That's a very common term across many games. But that's what makes it so annoying, is loss of agency for X amount of time.
Yeah, takes me out of the game. I just have to sit there and watch it, and it bothers me more that it's like these 4 or 5 little sequences. It would bother me less if it was like they did a combo on me. I had to guess. I guessed wrong. I know there's another combo. That would, for some reason, that bothers me less than just being like, okay, we're going to set up what 2 bombs and you're caught in a net, and then there's another bomb, and now I'm calling my cameo, and now you're stuck in a net again, and now it's time to guess. Okay, now I'm setting up another net, and here's a couple bombs. I don't know. It just kind of like you're playing Tetris while I'm trying to play MK.
Right. Well, there's so a lot of the legitimate Frost Orb setups require a bar, not for every character, but Noob, for example, I would say I wouldn't say the only legitimate, right? The way that I usually set it up is for a bar, in the corner off the EX air dive kick, right? You get the little corkscrew, you have enough hit advantage to bring it out. Now imagine if that didn't cost me the bar and it didn't cost me half a bar of cameo. If I could just do that every time, I could put you in a situation to where now you're in another mix-up to get frozen by the ice orb. Oh, you got hit by it. I threw you into it. Okay, now I'm going to do a combo and end in this combo into a frost orb setup, and I got you with the low this time. Yeah, fuck you. Oh, you tech the throw that time. Still frozen. My combo's only 80 damage, but now you're still in the vortex. I don't know that that's how her stuff works, but that's the feeling I get when I listen to people talk about it, right? I'm not deep into... I played that matchup a lot when the DLC first came out, and I was like, oh, but it's okay. People were looking on the bright side. It's not that strong. And the damage she gets isn't that good. But it's definitely gotten a bit more annoying to deal with.
Yeah, and I've played against your Noob Frost, and I've been in those same situations where it hit me knocked down in the corner, and then hey, party time. Yes, again,
right.
But for some reason that just doesn't get me as salty as it does when playing Cyrax Serena. I'm not really sure why. It's a totally casual complaint from myself. I realize that. Just there's the whole get good scrub, of course, mentality to it. But it's just kind of how I feel about the game, and we'll see if other people feel the same way, or if they're just like, no, you just need to learn the matchup a little bit more. Which, to be fair, I haven't really grinded that much. So.
I mean, that's why Master of Souls was kind of annoying to fight against in MKX, right? He was the Vortex one.
Yeah.
The Vortex variation, where it's just every combo ends in that same thing, and you get the soul to do the freeze at the end, or whatever the mechanic was. How many cycles of that did he get, or was it you just had to guess until?
Yeah, I think if you started off the round, he could get a full health bar combo. But again, in MKX, the combos went so fast because they did so much damage that it was in no time. It was just maybe a 30-second sequence, maybe, and you're dead just because you guessed wrong once. I remember my constant battles with Big D and the ESL Pro Komp. It always come down to top 16, and for whatever reason, we always met. It was just the way the brackets were. It was me and him almost every single week. And I always got mixed. I was never really able to put my game plan forth. I always just got hit first and then just never recovered. Yeah, those are good times. I miss those ESL Pro League events. I would like to see something like that come back. I mean, I guess we have the MK1 Pro competition thing now. So, but I don't know. It feels different. I liked competing online every week in that, and then having the finals on a different day. Something about that just felt different to me. I don't know. Good times.
Good times.
Good times. We'll see what the future holds for MK1.
Anything else stand out to you from pools or anything?
Not really. I saw a lot of Tremor. I'm trying to think if there was anything that really stood out to me. I believe Competitor got on stream once. My good old STB boy.
Oh, I missed that if he did.
Yeah, Johnny Cage. I think he beat up a Baraka. So that was cool to see.
All right.
Always good to see that STB representation at events. Well, we don't travel as much anymore, so But I didn't really see anything that stood out to me too much in the pools, any funky teams or anything. And there were no Quan Chis on stream. I saw that Woolander was there. I'm not sure if he played Quan or, I think he made top 24, I think. Or maybe top 48. I can't remember. But I didn't see any Quans on stream or anything. How about you? Did anything stand out to you from the pool play?
No, I don't know. I brought it up when I wasn't prepared to answer. I thought that it's actually honestly kind of a blur. It was like it's Memorial Day weekend, super busy weekend, and I watched what I could, and then I just feel like it all kind of like blurs together. And then all that MKX, the highlight for me was that MKX top 8. That was way more hype, but just good energy. It's like going to a good show, a show that's got a good crowd that's not super obnoxious. It's just, I'm glad I went out tonight. It seemed like one of those like sorts of things. But the Rewind, I guess, hasn't traveled in a while, and right back at it in grand finals. He definitely still has it. Sonic just credited him for keeping them in shape. Making sure all the setups are tight and challenging, making sure that he's playing honestly.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, this is actually the first time that Sonic has won a main Mortal Kombat game at Combo Breaker. Always eluded them. Second place, I remember, I think MK11 lost to Foxy. I think the last MKX lost to Tekken Master. I think it was the first time they were actually able to win. So
the curse is over. Stuck with Madame Bo Cyrax. It definitely looked like a struggle at times. Like, it's interesting to see Sonic struggle. And then, once you're in losers, it's like beast mode.
Yeah.
But
losers is such a different thing entirely. You have to have some pretty good experience to hold it together, because that's your tournament life at that point. At least when you're in winners, you might be a little riskier, a little bit more haphazard, because you have that cushion of like one loss, right? But when you're in losers, you got to lock in. That's you're going home if you lose there. So that's where you see the experience really shine, I think. But yeah, that being said, I think we covered everything we wanted to cover this week. We went over Combo Breaker, kind of our little future, what might look like for the podcast, maybe some balance changes and stuff coming forward. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for everyone for your patience, for having an extra day for the podcast to come through. Like we said, Memorial Day weekend and Combo Breaker and all that stuff. Just had to catch up on a bunch of things. So, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, because it really helps me out. And subscribe if you haven't, because I make new videos almost every single day. Hashtag Bonehawks, all that stuff, and we'll see all you Bonehawks in the next video.
Accept your death.